Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Fez. Today's video is going to be focused on loyalty. But first, I want to talk about a few scenarios that we as Muslims come across quite a bit today. Many of us experience and take part in many cultural traditions and practices that don't make much sense, and quite frankly, go against Islam. But we don't care or see anything wrong with them because they've been part of our culture for so long. Many of us like indulging in them and actually argue in favor of them. For example, in many South Asian weddings, we usually see someone carrying the Quran over the bride's or groom's head when they make an entrance or exit, or when they see each other for the first time after their Nikah. It apparently protects them as they begin their new journey as a couple and brings them good luck, barakah, blessings. But how? No one really cares. To think about it, it's tradition. It's fun. It adds a spiritual touch or shows that the emphasis on religion was given. Feels good that we've done our part and included our religion. But how have we convinced ourselves of this? Especially when the same wedding party doesn't align with the message of Quran itself. There's loud music, there's dancing, and free mixing to say the least. It's literally pushing an agenda that disobeys and disrespects the words of the same Quran that is being carried over the couple's heads for the sake of tradition. How does any of this make sense? The general thought behind such traditions is, it's part of our culture. Everyone does it. But this isn't obeying Allah or representing Islam in any shape or form. If somehow we understand the truth and we realize the deception and corruption behind these traditions, we might start thinking, how can we leave it? What are people going to say? When it comes to taking a stance, excuses start popping up. This happens a lot, especially when it comes to obeying Allah. And then we think not holding the Quran above the couple might take away the spiritual touch from the ceremony because everything else is corrupted and woke anyways. We'll lose our chance of showcasing something that'll make us feel connected to the Deen, when this practice isn't from Islam at all. Having no music and dance will make the party boring. No one will post our event on their Instagram stories or Snapchats. Having a gathering where there is segregation between men and women, like our Deen promotes and commands, is going to be a big problem for our families, our guests, our friends. People won't like it. So much so that even when someone passes away, the gathering that is often held to mourn, remember, and make dua for the deceased is often a mixed gathering with no sign of segregation. Again, excuses where the words of the Quran are openly disobeyed and disrespected. But in this situation, someone just passed away. They've returned to Allah. If you're going to have 30, 40, 50 people in your house that will visit and bring food and offer their condolences, my brothers and sisters, please have the men and women sit separately. Honor the words of Allah. You want to honor the deceased and pray for their maghfirah. Don't make obedience to Allah subjective. Someone just returned to Allah. It's only a matter of time before it's our turn. We have to stop being arrogant about the things we're doing wrong, and we have to start becoming obedient. We've been misguided. Let's just accept it. And we are continuing to misguide our children to the point where the words of Allah seem like a big inconvenience. So they are misrepresented, diluted, and corrupted. Is this how obsessed we are with social pleasure? Are we really showing Allah that social practices and norms are more important than the word of Allah? Quite honestly, the average Muslim is not interested in what the Quran has to say. But ironically, they keep such a great count on how many times they've completed reciting it from end to end. When I was younger, people would typically ask my parents if I've finished the Quran, meaning, have I learned how to read it and completed reading it from beginning to end? And my parents would proudly say yes. Then they would ask me, how many times have you read the Quran? I would say 3 times or 4 times or whatever it was at that point. And they'd say, MashaAllah. My cousin would say, I finished it 8 times, which was apparently better. But the interesting part was, neither us or our elders understood the purpose of the Quran, especially the non-Arab communities, there was a language barrier. We just thought we have to maximize the number of times we read the Quran cover to cover. It was common to throw a party when a child finishes reading the Quran for the first time. But that party again had nothing to do with the teachings of the Quran. Same stuff. Mixed gatherings, no one abiding by the hijab, men and women, boys and girls joking, mingling, having fun. We see the same thing with iftar parties in the month of Ramadan, when a child fasts for the first time, or even when a child is born. Their aqiqah all being celebrated in whichever way we want. These celebrations are the blessings of our deen. They are acts of ibadah. Hijab, no problem. Mahram, non-mahram, no problem. Let's all just enjoy. You've spent the whole day fasting and praying for the sake of Allah to fulfill your obligation. This is to protect your deen, not break it as soon as you get the chance. It would only be common sense to hold our events in accordance with that which pleases Allah and avoid that which goes against His message. Many of us don't even think that Islam has these prescriptions in place. Look at our Eid celebrations. These parties have stopped looking like Eid for decades now. They're nothing more than fashion shows and photo shoots. The photo shoots begin in the masjid, wallahi, at least here in the West. In the masjid, outside the masjid, in the parking lots. The crazy thing is, this is considered normal now. More and more people are accepting this as normal. Again, the obsession with social pleasure eats into all the good, all the blessings, all the acts of worship that we've done and that which we continue to do. You see, all of this that we've been discussing, this is a byproduct of things that have happened over decades, my brothers and sisters. Our Prophet ﷺ has said, there doesn't come a time except the time that comes after is worse, which means whatever we see today is only going to get worse. People will keep going further and further away from the words of Allah and the ways of Islam. Picture what these things will look like in 20 years. You can just compare to what they are now versus 20 years ago. Coming back to my earlier point, if we are to think, how can we stop doing these things? To not go against the words of Allah, to not disobey the religion we claim to follow, to not fall into this corruption and dilution, which is only going to lead towards darkness over time. Those are the key words, darkness over time. If we are to think of abiding by the deen and reverting to the true teachings and change the way we socialize, have our parties, do things different to what we have thought as normal, the first thing that will come to mind is, what will people say? How will everyone react? What if we are isolated? The fear of missing out is so real, brothers and sisters. How can we implement this change? How can we throw a party which would please Allah? How can we build relationships that will please Allah? Relationships that will actually last, because they are there for the sake of Allah. Socializing and having gatherings and guests and celebrating the blessings of Allah. These are all good things. Please don't misunderstand me. These are all great things, and we are encouraged to do them. But there is a prescription to how we do it. There are boundaries. But then, what will society say? The family or the extended family or our friends? Or. The list goes on and on. But let me tell you something you need to know. This is where I want to bring up what I had mentioned in the beginning of this video. Loyalty. The people you are so concerned about, the ones you are so worried about offending, the people whose opinions you're bothered by because you're looking to implement Allah's deen. The biggest thing you'll see with these people is that they will be the first ones to toss you over for a better option, with or without your deen. They will be the first to change parties or to change sides as soon as you disagree with them or have a misunderstanding. They will forget you and leave you when times become hard. That is the nature of people. There is no loyalty. People's loyalty is towards their nafs, their desires, and what attracts them. Not to you, not to what is right. You are just ammunition that is catering to their nafs. The moment you stop, loyalties shift. They will go after the ones that will cater to their nafs, their ego, their desires. Are you really willing to disobey God? To please them, to impress them, or to be important for them? Here's another thing. We don't realize that we ourselves have been disloyal to Allah while doing so. That is the hard truth. Loyalty is scarce, and for the ones that are loyal to you and do stick around when life gets tough and don't change sides because of their feelings, make it a point to give them da'wah as well. We should always be giving da'wah anyways, which is inviting people to the truth. Our Deen, present the Deen to them beautifully and pray to Allah that He opens their hearts and gives them hidayah. Maybe you haven't thought of any of this before and might feel like this is a bit much, too extreme, but it's actually not. It's really the basics of Islam, our social function, because Islam is a way of life, and our customs, our traditions, our culture, these need to be adjusted to ensure the guidelines and boundaries of how Allah wants communities, societies, and families to function socially are respected and maintained. It's time you start thinking and take action, because times are getting worse and the message of Islam is getting diluted by the day.